Today is Thursday, July 29th, and this is Tokyo Daily, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics show from the Toronto Star. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. The Canadian women continue to win in Tokyo. Rowing pair Kaylee Filmer and Hilary Janssens are the latest to medal for Canada, surviving the grueling 2,000-meter course to win bronze in their rowing event. It's the first medal for the Canadian rowing team, who sent their largest contingent to Tokyo with 10 boats and 29 rowers. Canada has a boat in the women's Final 8 event, which goes tonight. In the pool, Penny Oleksiak and Team Canada set a national record time and finished fourth in the 4x200-meter relay. It was a marathon for Summer McIntosh, Rebecca Smith, and Kylie Sanchez and Oleksiak. The Chinese team set a world record, while Katie Ledecky was incredible. She swam the fastest split of any swimmer in the pool to power Team USA to a silver medal, her third medal at these Olympic Games. Australia started hot in the relay, but took bronze. Kia Nurse and the Canadian women's basketball team needed to come out hot. They grabbed their first win at these games, out-rebounding, out-shooting Korea to win 74-53. Check out Doug Smith's column in the Toronto Star on thestar.com. Bridget Carleton dropping a team-high 18 points in the win for Canada, who will play Spain in their final group game. Sarah Pavin and Melissa Humana-Paradis, they haven't dropped a set in the sand. The Canadian medal favorites beat Switzerland last night to take top spot in Group A. Arash Badeni said on yesterday's show, Tokyo Daily, he said he thinks that they will be the ones carrying the flag for the closing ceremonies. Now, they'll definitely have some competition from the track and field now underway. It's also provided a major COVID scare. Two-time world champion pole vaulter, American Sam Kendricks, was pulled from competition after a positive COVID-19 test. Because he had trained with an Australian athlete, the entire 63-member Australian track and field team went into isolation. They were cleared. All resumed regular activities today, but COVID very much a talking point at these games, very much a talking point on Thursday after Tokyo recorded nearly 4,000 new COVID-19 cases, marking 3 straight days of record-breaking case totals in Japan. My guest today has been in Tokyo covering it all, the Toronto Star's Dave Feschuk. Dave, how's Tokyo treating you?
You know, pretty good, Brendan. I mean, there was a lot of dread rolling in here, as you might imagine. We weren't sure what to expect. It's a bizarre Olympics, I'll say that. I mean, it's strange to be in the aquatics arena. It's strange to be anywhere without fans. It really is. I was just at the rowing venue today, and to see the sort of incredible backdrop of empty seats right along the finish line there, where normally you get that kind of cacophony of incredible sound as the crews rolled toward the finish line. It's bizarre, and talking to athletes about it, it has changed. It has changed the Olympic experience for the athletes, which was really the important thing. But it is what it is, as they say, and people are dealing with it, and we'll have to move on.
We've become so used to it in North America, watching every sporting event in empty stadiums. The television product for the Olympics has been great, and Canadians have been watching. More than half the country has taken this in, so Canadians absolutely are loving it. It's interesting to hear that the athletes feel that experience. I guess for a lot of these sports where that would be completely foreign, even something like swimming, where you might only have a few hundred, it's always jammed and it's always loud. In the opportunities where the other teammates are able to be there and support that, do they feel a collective, responsibility to overcompensate for the fans that are missing?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny at the swimming venue. I was there for the first Canadian medal of the Olympics, where Penny Oleksiak had that incredible anchor leg in the 4x100 freestyle relay, and it was a bizarre scenario because you felt very privileged to be there because you're looking at this. It's a fairly big arena, right? Like the Tokyo Aquatic Center is a fairly big building. I think their capacity probably be in the 5,000 to 6,000 range if they were allowing fans. What you had instead was 20 members of the Canadian team, some swimmers who weren't swimming that day, plus coaches and trainers and dignitaries. And 20 from the Americans and 20 from the Australians, and it was just like these little cheering sections, these tiny cheering sections that you might see at like a little league baseball game kind of thing, like the parents at a little league baseball game. I would kind of compare the noise from parents at a soccer game, in any given park. Not that anybody's going to soccer games in Toronto just yet for kids, but it's kind of a very intimate kind of noise, right? It's not the boom I've been in I've been in so many of these stadiums during, I think I've been in 8 games, and so many of these stadiums, like the boom of that moment when like a Penny Oleksiak is running down the Americans to win a silver medal. It is incredible, and it's thrilling, and it raises the hair on the back of your neck. I'm sure it raises the adrenaline level of the athletes. But this is so different, right? Like there is support, but it's like piecemeal support, and I'm sure it means something to them. But I don't think there's any replacing. There's no replacing the energy of thousands and thousands of people, I think, is what we're finding out here. And that's the fascinating thing.
And the energy in general has just been so strange across the board, obviously, for everyone involved. I know for media, it's been a completely different experience as well. Since we just mentioned the pool, how impressed are you by how Canada's swim team has performed, given what they had come into? I mean, Canada had spent the most time out of the pool, living in Ontario through some of the strongest restrictions that affect the training of all the Ontario-based swimmers. To see them come so close in the relay, Penny missing out, but Canada finishing fourth there in that team relay. What the Canadian women and the men, but the Canadian women have done in the pool has been pretty incredible.
Well, yeah, the men better step it up on every level in every sport. I mean, the women are 10 for 10 here, and I think the women won 16 of our 22 medals in Rio. So yeah, there is a broader conversation about what's wrong with Canadian men's sports in the Summer Olympics, but we'll have that conversation, I'm sure, as we move on here. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, it's incredibly impressive, right? And I mean, I think when you look at this pandemic, and we've all suffered. There's no doubt. Like everybody's suffered. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a reason for why it's hurt them or hurt somebody very close to them. And we've heard like the stories it's life and death stuff, and it's changed lives. It's ended lives. It's so sports is on the continuum of that. The suffering in sports is. We have to put that in perspective. But to me, it's real because these are real lives. Like these young people who are trying to pursue these things, this is all they have. This is life and death for them, and you saw it with Simone Biles. I mean, like the stresses and strains of being a high profile face of the games type athlete are incredible. And Simone Biles, just informed the world that she was not really interested in continuing to handle those. So I'm impressed with, Canadians, the Canadian women swim team here, like that training group in Toronto. I think that to me is the fun story, the heartening story of, it was terrible for those girls, and they had to fight through a lot during this pandemic to sort of stay fit and stay focused toward this goal. By the way, a goal that they weren't sure was ever going to, materialize, because there was all kinds of times here where we weren't sure these games were going to happen. And yet they did it, and that to me is an incredible triumph. And I really appreciate how I think the Canadian Olympic Committee was quite smart and the Swimming Canada Committee was smart too in not putting expectations out there. Normally, sports writers like me, Brennan, we'd kill them for that, right?
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to put expectations out there because they've taken all this taxpayer money, which they get a considerable amount of, and they do have to have some accountability because of that. Normally we would kill them because, like, you got to tell us what you're going to do here. You got to give us some indication of what is a good games, what is not a good games. But I think all bets were off in this one because of the fact that these athletes had not trained, and more to the point, because these athletes had not raced. For Canada to have raced once in 18 months and then to come out and do what they've done is incredibly impressive. And I think it really speaks to a great support system for these athletes. I'm sure their parents are very much involved. I'm sure their friends and loved ones are very much involved, but also, the sports system in Canada, I think, has been very sympathetic to the plight of these athletes, and maybe more so than some of the other Olympic committees that maybe been a little less tolerant of their needs and wants and mental health issues along the way.
Sure. I mean, the pandemic has brought out a forgiveness across the board. I mean, you talk about the expectation to let the world know, what Swim Canada intends to do. I mean, forgiveness allows me to do shows in my basement. There's an expectation that
Yeah.
things have changed a little bit. We're working through different circumstances. But you brought up a really good point. So I'd love to take the time if you want to get into what's wrong with the men's side of Olympic sport and why there's such a gap when it comes to medals and performance.
Well, look, I mean, that is an interesting conversation. I mean, I don't know there's any way you can pinpoint it. I mean, and look, there's a lot of great medal hopes here for the men. I never like to tell the story of the games in the middle of the games because you never know how it's going to turn out here. We got an incredible roster of guys. I mean, Andre DeGrasse, the track meet is just starting up tomorrow. Mo Ahmed's going to be in the 10,000 meter final. I mean, he's a guy that could do well there. He's definitely going to be a guy who'll do well in the 5,000 meter. We got Andre DeGrasse. I mean, the list of guys, the male competitors who have a chance here for Canada is considerable. So, I was being a bit facetious, but look, I do think Canada, for all our strengths, and we have many, including a great commitment to, a taxpayer-funded own the podium system that has definitely produced results for us. I think maybe one of our real strengths is that we treat women equally. We're trying, or at least we're trying to, more equally than maybe they're treated in the rest of the world. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying that there aren't gaps. There are gaps. We saw one of the gaps was in the cycling race. I mean, I was amazed at the old world chauvinism of the UCI, which governs global cycling, and Clara Hughes, the greatest Olympian we've ever had. If not one, Penny Alexiak's got something to say about that because they both got 6 Olympic medals. But Clara Hughes sounded off in a piece I wrote about how going back to Atlanta in 1996, there were 58 women in the women's cycling road race in Atlanta when Clara Hughes medaled for Canada, and there were 180 men in that same cycling road race in 96, and the ratio hadn't changed that much in 2021. It was I forget the exact numbers, but it was something in the range of 3-1, men to women in the field of the cycling road race. That's not right, and that speaks to, the old world, blue blazered, chauvinism, frankly,
Sure.
I know there are those who would call it misogyny, but whatever it is, it's not right. And I think in Canada, I'm not saying, again, I would never say it's perfect, but I do think we're coming closer to gender equity on a lot of levels in terms of the way we support athletes. And I think we should, of course, that's the way it should be. It only makes sense. And, but in a lot of other countries, that is not the case. And I think we are ahead of a lot of countries because of that. It doesn't mean we should get complacent. Doesn't mean we should rest on our laurels, but I do think it tells us why, we got a bit of a leg up in some ways. I mean, that's just one theory. I'm not saying that's the definitive theory, but I do think there's something to it.
I feel like I continually say that, the women keep flying the flag for Canada. That seems to work into my show, and because it's the truth. I'm interested to see if this momentum carries over into women's sports when the games are done. If the WNBA numbers continue to increase, the Canadians women's team still with medal hopes after a win over Korea. I'm really excited to see how that translates and what other ways maybe that can. If it is pressure on the governing bodies, if it's more pressure on public funding for these sports, I really hope that all the momentum that was built and the attention given to Canadian women continues after these games.
Look, I think it's pressure on the governing bodies. I also think it's pressure on investors, like people that want to make bold bets. I think there's a real opportunity in women's sports. I really do. I mean, I've been saying this for quite some time. There's every 4 years, or in this case, every 5 years, we see the TV numbers for women's sports, women's soccer. The Canadian women's national soccer team draws eyeballs. It compels people. People want to love this team. That's just one team, and I do think there's a real appetite for women's sports, and I think it takes investment. I really do. I think you can go not just summer, you can go to hockey, you can go to the WNBA and the NBA. The multi-billion-dollar organization that is the biggest entity in men's pro basketball. They've invested in the WNBA for years and years and years, and not necessarily profitably, especially in the early years. I think I would argue it's probably going to pay off for them. The NHL has made no such investment. And look,
Yeah.
I understand that it's a different league and there are different priorities, but progressiveness is progressiveness, and the opposite of that is what the NHL is. You know that as well as I do, Brendan, and we've been watching that league a long time. So I do think there's a huge opportunity for women's sports, and people want to love these athletes. These athletes are compelling, and these athletes have followings, whether it be on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, whatever it is. I just think that the old world infrastructure, the sort of the conventional infrastructure of the sports, the rights holder kind of universe, which may or may not be dying. I'm not sure. There's still a lot of money changing hands in those spaces. That just hasn't caught up yet. And I think for those who see it and bet on it and make it happen, I think it's a great opportunity.
Your work from Tokyo has been very compelling. I've enjoyed reading all your stories. I wanted to ask you about Hideki Matsuyama and some track, but before we run out of time, what's coming up for you next? What are you working on for day 7?
Well, big story down at the rowing regatta tomorrow. It's the last day of the rowing regatta. You know, this is a year where we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the McBean-Heddle partnership. Of course, they won 3 gold medals in the Summer Olympics together, Marnie McBean and Kathleen Heddle in rowing. Nobody in Canada has not produced an athlete since, let alone 2 that have won 3 medals in the Summer Games. But the rowing program's fallen on a bit of hard times here, Brendan. Despite the fact that they get, you know, as much funding as anybody outside of swimming and track, and pretty near close to both. They've only got 1 medal in these games. They only got 1 in Rio. So there's a lot of pressure tomorrow on the women's 8 in the rowing regatta because they're Canada's last medal hope. I'm going to be down there to see that. And I actually believe in that crew. They haven't raced much, but I know there's a great internal feeling that they're going to perform tomorrow. Beyond that, I'm going over to the 10,000 meter final. There is nothing more compelling to me than the suffering and tactics that go on in a 10,000 or 5,000 meter race at the Olympics. Mo Ahmed, he's a St. Catharines guy. I'm a St. Catharines guy. And I'm looking forward to cheering for him. I'm not cheering for him. I don't cheer for anybody at the Olympics. I'm a journalist, but I gotta admit, there is a little piece of my heart that is cheering for St. Catharines and all his supporters in my hometown, and not to mention all the supporters across the nation who love this guy because he is as fast as anybody in the distance game right now. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs in that race. Not only that race, but the 5,000 meter, where him and Justin Knight from Toronto are both guys who have a possibility of winning a medal. The track meet, man, to me, that's the essence of the Olympics, and I'm looking forward to that getting started.
Yeah, very excited for athletics. And yes, we are journalists, but we're in this because we have a passion for sports, and that passion will always be there. We're human. So there's a lot of people with you there and cheering on the Canadians, especially someone like Mohamed, who has a great story and a great chance. So, Dave, I really appreciate chatting with you. This is the first time we've had a conversation longer than the elevator allowed. So thanks for coming on Tokyo Daily, and definitely want to do this again soon.
Yeah, anytime, Brendan. It was a real pleasure and great chatting with you.
Dave wrote a great piece on Tuesday about Hideki Matsuyama, the weight of expectation he feels as one of the biggest names for Japan at these home Olympic Games. Golf underway. Canadians Corey Connors and Mackenzie Hughes started their tournament with matching 2 under-69 rounds. They are 6 shots back of Australian Sepp Straka, the 161st ranked player in the world, has the lead after day 1. Check out Adam Stanley's piece in the Toronto Star as well. It's a nice one about the golf tournament that is underway. Check out Tokyo Daily every single day during these Olympic Games. Watch it on the Toronto Star's YouTube page. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk a little soccer tomorrow as Team Canada take on Brazil in the quarterfinals. Thanks for kicking it with me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.